Some of my friends have talked about their frustration with the word slave coming up so many different times in the Bible, especially the New Testament. Not just slaves obey your masters, that's the typical one people will go to, but even a Romans 1:1, for example, where it says that Paul mentions we should all be slaves of Christ. Now, I think the word slave coming up in the Bible is not necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps, yes, now in our more Western, postmodern understanding of things after what happened with slavery. But if you go back to that time period, what did the word doulos really stand for when it came to slave? It was more so the term was used for one, absolute, utter belonging to Christ that we have. Two, the cost of following him. And then three, obviously many Christians were slaves. So again, utter belonging, cost, and then many were actually slaves. That's why that term comes up so many times.
And you're right, in our culture the word slave really hits a raw nerve. Dr. Martin Luther King gave him an important rationale for shining light on injustice, specifically racism and slavery. Like a boil that can never be cured so long as it is covered up, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light, injustice must be exposed, with all the tension its exposure creates, to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion. Before it can be cured, it's got to be exposed to the air and the light. Fascinating point Dr. Martin Luther King made. And obviously Jesus made that point throughout the Gospels. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus says, when the Son of Man returns in power and great glory, he'll gather all the nations together, as a shepherd gathers the sheep and the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And he'll say to those on his left, enter the hell that is prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you never visited me. And those on his left are going to say, when, Jesus, when do we ever see you in that kind of a jam? And he will say, every time you did not do it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did not do it to me. Then he will turn to those on his right and say, enter the heaven that is prepared. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was naked, and you clothed me, sick and in prison, and you visited me. And those on his right are going to say, when, Jesus, when do we ever see you in that kind of predicament? And he will answer, every time you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. What on earth is Jesus talking about? The folks on the left didn't murder anybody. They didn't bring him a whip down on the back of a slave. No. Instead, they took the gifts that God had given them, and they wasted them. They essentially concluded that there was no real purpose to life, that they could hoard and be greedy and just do whatever they wanted to, and ignore hurting people. And Jesus Christ points out very graphically, appealing to our consciences, that God created us to do that which is just and good, compassionate, loving, and to care for each other. So Dr. Martin Luther King was right. The conscience needs to be activated. The rationalizations for doing wrong, the excuses, the blame shifting needs to stop. And I begin to take responsibility for the fact that I have neglected using the gifts that God has given me to make this world more like heaven will be. And that's why the grace of God is so important. Because I experience guilt. I know that I've done wrong. No question about it. But Jesus Christ bled and died on a cross to take the penalty I deserve, to take the hit that I deserve from my wrongdoing. Yes, conscience needs to kick in. I need to face up to the wrong that I've done, turn to Christ for forgiveness, and put my faith and trust in him. And so do we all. For all of us have abused the beautiful good gifts that God has given us. And when we trust in Christ, he begins to change us so that we begin to use those gifts to fulfill the purpose for which he gave them to us, to benefit others, to love others. God bless you as you do that.